Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 414. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest coaches leaders and develops effective boards as a board consultant. Welcome, Genita Robinson.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Frances. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
I'd like them to know I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. Grew up mostly in the suburbs. However, my mom was a single parent and took advantage of a Section 8 or low-income housing grant to move to the suburbs. I'm a lawyer by training, but I haven't practiced for many years. I have a background in working in government, nonprofits, and now running my own business as a consultant. Most of my work is really around capacity building, helping nonprofits to become their better selves. And that includes board training, leadership development, strategic planning, and possibly negotiating partnerships between nonprofits.
Talk about transitioning out of law into consulting and why.
Well, there were a few steps along the way, and I really credit my path out of law to a book called What Color is Your Parachute? It was recommended to me when I was in college. I was a resident assistant, so working in the freshman dorms, and our director of residence life, it was a favorite book of hers. And it really helps you to figure out what your path is based on what you're passionate about. And I realized there was something that happened when I was practicing law that should have been a seminal moment and wasn't for me, where I had put on a witness at a hearing. And I'd completely forgotten about it almost as soon as it happened, and only remembered it after I'd had like an evaluation after that. And they said, well, when you get to do that, then you'll reach this milestone. And I was like, oh, wait, I already did that. So anyway, I went to What Color is Your Parachute? And it takes you through these steps of figuring out like what are sort of the big stories of your life. And for me, a lot of my stories were involved around education. And so I wanted to figure out how I could work in education without getting another degree. And so I actually ended up back at my alma mater at my law school, doing law school admissions for 3 years. And then from there, I transitioned into a nonprofit that worked in K through 12 education. From there into the Chicago Public Schools in the central office at the time that Arnie Duncan was CEO. And then it was after leaving CPS that I first started to consult.
Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is really a nonprofit capacity builder or a funder who are looking to help groups of nonprofits enhance their own capacity by either serving more people, growing their revenue, or becoming better leaders. And they can be located anywhere. I'm able to travel. I also do really well via Zoom or teleconference or whatever virtual platform is needed. But my ideal client really are funders or capacity builders who work with other nonprofits to help enhance their capacity.
What is something, Genita, that we don't know about the consulting industry that we should know?
Something that we don't know about the industry that we really should know. I think that unfortunately, we don't know how to find good consultants. I think that clients and potential clients too often are caught up in this idea that, oh, the best way to find somebody is I have to go out and I have to get 3 scopes and compare them, or I have to put together an RFP and send that out and have, dozens or maybe hundreds of people submit something. And that's not really going to find you a good match. To find a good match, you really need to have an understanding of sort of I think fit is most important. But B, you have to understand what you need. And I cannot speak for every consultant out there, but for me, I'm happy to have conversations with potential clients to help them think about what it is they need rather than have them kind of guess at what they need or get a scope from me in terms of my perception of what they need and a scope from three other people in terms of their perception of what they need. So I think what people don't understand is that a consultant is about sort of fit, right? Cultural fit, but it's also about having conversations to understand what your needs are and then finding the consultant who can match those.
Speaking of need, what do you need that you don't have to move the needle forward?
What I am working on is building up my staffing. So I have a program assistant that I work with who is wonderful. But what I would like to do, possibly by the end of the year, is have a part-time junior project manager working with me to take on some of the lower level tasks and help me really focus my attention on the care and feeding of the client more than anything else. So that's, I think, what I need to move the needle forward.
I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name this person, living or not. They've inspired you so much. What are you saying to this person? And who is this person?
You may start me to cry. Dr. Francis, I often think about my grandmother who passed away more than 20 years ago now, but whom I was lucky enough to have in my life into adulthood and who I spent a lot of my childhood with because, again, my mother was a single parent. And so my sister and I spent lots of weekends with my grandmother. We spent most summers with her. I developed an unhealthy habit of watching ABC soap operas because of my grandmother. But my grandmother always listened to me. She always listened to my hard questions that I asked about life, about our family. And she was pretty encouraging. And I say pretty encouraging because at a certain point, I think it was hard for her to kind of understand my path because she had grew up in the rural South and had work as a domestic in the South before moving to Chicago with my grandfather as part of the Great Migration. Then she ended up supervising housekeeping services at a girls' finishing school, but she never gotten past an elementary school education. After I graduated from college and then had gone to law school, she expressed sometimes like she thought I was doing too much. And law school was hard. I'm sure she could sense that I at times was struggling. And so if I could have a monologue with her, I would thank her for all the love and care that she provided to me. And I would just say to her, I'm okay. Like that it was worth it and I got a lot out of it and I am okay. And that my grandfather really set us up to be successful and that we are grateful for the sacrifices that they made and the things that they provided. And not just the material things, but like I said, just always listening. Yeah, just always listening. Because I think it's the rare adult that will listen to a kid on and on and on and on.
Thank you, Genita, for being so authentic for that. Appreciate you. You could take a minute there. There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
And or business that's dominating that I admire. That's a hard one for me because I feel like a lot of the domination is through actually not great business practices. And so I'm going to flip that question a little bit. And I'm going to talk about something I read recently. And it was in the Atlantic and it was by Amanda Mull. And it's about the bankruptcy of Bed Bath & Beyond. And it's so interesting. And I tweeted about it and I was so excited because she actually liked my tweet and responded to it. But it was really philosophical because it talked about, first of all, Bed Bath & Beyond and stores like it, right, had taken over for mom and pop stores, right? And then now the Bed Bath and Beyonds are going out of business because of the Amazons and, everything that we can get at the convenience of a fingertip, right, delivered right to our home. But I'm going to quote the article for a second. Convenience can only provide so much, and it alone is not a particularly worthwhile ultimate goal of human existence, right? Because with convenience, we lose that interaction with each other. We lose that high touch interaction. And for folks like younger folks, right, whether teens, college students, you lose that interaction with people who aren't exactly like you. If there were a brand that I would love, it would be a brand that would really emphasize that human connection. But I don't think there are a lot of brands that do that because that's not efficient. That's not the profit margin. That's not how you drive profit, right? But it's how you make a better society.
What was that aha moment that you knew your business was going to be successful?
Let's see if I've had it. I think there was advice that I'd gotten from a former colleague who had gone in and out of consulting multiple times. And his advice was, you just get those first 3 clients, you're good, because from that, you'll get repeat business, you'll get referrals. And he was right, because when I first started out, it was really about getting the first 3, and then it was repeat business and referrals. And so much of my business comes from word of mouth and people vouching for me and saying she will get what you need and she will provide good quality service. So it might have been after that 3rd client.
Genita, what problem exists in the world today that you would like to solve?
The problem that exists in the world today that I would like to solve is actually, it's not a world problem as much as it is a US problem, and that is the problem of gun violence. I served for several years on the board of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. Gun violence is a public health problem in this society, and we do not treat it, I think, enough as such. And if I could solve that problem, I would. And I think there are solutions to it, but whether there is the will, especially the will amongst some politicians, I'm not sure, but that would be the problem I would want to solve.
What is your zone of genius?
Everyone asks about my zone of genius. If it is, well, I could talk about, people often ask about your superpower, but I would say my zone of genius is the things that I'm really good at it's a combination of a few things that are part of, right, strength finders, right? A few of my top strengths are input, discipline, communication. And with those 3, right, input, I'm able to take in a lot of information. Discipline, I'm able to create order out of it. And communications, I'm able to then explain to others what it means or what it could mean. So my zone of genius is really taking a lot of information provided to me, oftentimes by my clients, creating order out of it, and then communicating out here's the potential in it. Here's what you can create. Here's a path or a plan to do so, and here's how it's going to be successful.
Let's take a snapshot of the last 30 days. What was your biggest win?
My biggest win of the last 30 days might have been setting some boundaries, actually. And I think that, right, that as a Black woman, it's so important to set boundaries, whether that's about not trying to do it all or be all things to all people, but also about protecting myself. And for me, as of late, it's been about making sure that I am thoughtful about what it is that I am providing in terms of my intellectual property, and being thoughtful about ways that I am protecting that. So that might be maybe my biggest win in the last 30 days.
And how do you celebrate your wins?
I think I would like to figure out how better to celebrate my wins, because I will sometimes celebrate wins by just sharing news with people that I care about. But there are times when I finish something that took me a while to finish, like a big deliverable. And then I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do? And sometimes it's because it's late in the evening that I finished it or something. And I wish I would actually recognize that I have a win coming and actually plan something in advance to celebrate it. And maybe you're giving me an idea, because I know I have a a multi-month project that's going to finish up later this month, and I should probably like think about now, like how to plan something to celebrate that with.
Talk about mental wellness and managing a business.
I don't know if this is necessarily related to managing the business, but what mental wellness is very important to me. And I have a therapist. We go back and forth. Like I will need to see her for different periods of time because something's going on, and then maybe not talk to her for months. I'm going to be seeing her this Friday. And I feel like it's really important to openly talk about the fact that therapy is a good thing. I also, though, believe in self-care. I have been a journaler to some extent, probably since I was 9. It's not like an everyday thing. It probably was at times when I was growing up, but journaling is hugely important to me because it helps me. I talked about like that input, discipline, and communications mix. And so oftentimes there's so much floating around in my head that it is just helpful to get it out on paper. And it is interesting because I was talking to a teenager recently about my journaling, and they had said that they were trying it, but when they go back, it just sounds so silly. And I was like, well, when are you going back to read? And they're like, well, when I go back the next week. I was like, why are you reading something the next week? I was like, I maybe won't read things until years later, if at all. The purpose was just to get it out of my head and process it, not to like judge it later. Mental wellness, as I said, right? Therapy, journaling, physical activity. I love walking. I feel better walking every day. This is a podcast, so people don't have the benefit of the visual, but I have a planning calendar behind me. And I plan out for the coming year with like times that I'm going to take vacation. I plan out in terms of when big projects are, and I plan out based on like major holidays and like school spring breaks. But I also started giving myself a sticker for every day that I walked outside, just to motivate myself and to remind myself like how much better I'll feel. Like when I see like, oh, like I feel really great because I walked 5 days today, 5 days this week, versus like, oh, I'm feeling a little crappy. That's because I didn't get outside except for 2 days this week. Those are the things that are, I guess, for me going to mental wellness. I do think though, it's just so important to make time for it, because people talk about like the flexibility of working for yourself and running a business, but there's always something to do. There's always something to do. And so only you can say like, I'm going to stop now. I'm going to stop for the day. I'm going to stop for the week. I'm going to stop and take a vacation. Only you can do that, but you have to do that.
What would make you stop completely doing your business, if anything?
I don't know. I mean, I'll retire at some point, right? But my hope, actually, retirement, that I might still do some of the things that I do, but for fewer hours, and just be able to volunteer because I've saved enough for retirement. So, I mean, I really enjoy what I do. So I don't know. Like, I don't, like my work is not one that like I foresee like turning into something that like gets bought out or anything like that. Like that, I don't have like an exit strategy in that sense. So for me, I really love what I do. And I'm glad I figured out what I love doing. And so I'm going to keep doing it.
What is something that you dream about often that you have not done that you would like to do?
Well, I don't know if it's dream or nightmare, but I actually would like to write a book, a small book, not a very long book, about nonprofit boards. And I have an outline and I've written parts of it, and I need to just come back to my own personal discipline and get back to writing more of it, because I think I have some things to share, and that's a way to share it with multiple people. So I like to finish a book.
So working with these nonprofit boards, what is some takeaways that you'd like to share?
First one is, we always have to remember nonprofit boards are made up of people, and people are messy, right? People are messy. But if you create some clear expectations, document some clear roles and responsibilities, provide some training and orientation, provide some training again periodically and evaluate boards, they can really be value add to nonprofits in their mission.
What is the first wound that you've experienced with a boss or a leader?
Worked for someone who I think just had a personality disorder. And before I realized that, it was just really hard interacting with that person because there would be these long conversations that seemed nonsensical, just lots of word salad. And I felt like I couldn't trust my own memory at some point. And it was exhausting, right? Because it wasn't a big part for me about running my own business, and my small team is about being drama free and about focusing on the work. And so, yeah, that I would say that first wound from a boss was just too much drama and too much energy sucking because of the drama.
Let's talk about raising capital and funding your business. How did you fund your business?
So I was privileged enough that when I started out consulting, I had savings. And so I was able to pay for my own expenses that way. So I've never had to take on any sort of debt or raise any investments from any outsiders. I completely own my business. There's no debt in my business. I've thought about whether or not I want to establish a line of credit, just to establish credit in the name of the business and to have it if need be. But I've self-funded my business. But that's the privilege that I have had, in that at the time that I first started, I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I hadn't been practicing law for a while, but I'd had a law degree and I'd worked in large law firms, and then I'd had jobs that paid decently well. I paid off my student loans. And so I had money set aside.
Advice you wish you had followed?
If there's advice I wish I had followed, there are people that I trust and I follow their advice. So I don't know if there's advice that I wish I had followed that I could easily think of. There are people that I trust, including I'm privileged enough to know a lot of other female business owners and to have a good network and to be able to talk openly about things and to be vulnerable and transparent. So I will say advice that I've been grateful that I have followed is another female business owner in a completely different sector gave me advice early on about pricing and about how, my pricing was probably too low. And she had come out of the world of consulting, and she talked about how she had used what her consulting rate was to then take a factor of that and set up for her business rate, right? And that was really good advice. I look back then at what I'd been billed out as a lawyer, and I was able to take a factor of that. And that was, it was more than what I was charging, but much less than what I'd been billed out as a lawyer, and what clients were willing to pay. And then I got great advice from another woman consultant who does a lot of work on fundraising. And she was talking about, it was advice along the lines about the clients that you have and how that they may have work that isn't right up your alley, but how to keep reminding them of what it is that you do really excel at and how you can help them. And so that was really good advice. So I don't know if there's advice that I haven't taken that I wish I have, but I am really grateful for the advice that I have.
And starting a business, there's a lot of risk and rewards. Talk about your most costly lesson and what was your takeaway?
I don't know if I could quantify. Well, maybe there's two, right? And it goes back to what I said about pricing. Early on, I might have priced myself too low, right? And that probably cost me. And then in terms of protecting my IP, I might have at times been too generous in providing my intellectual property to others, and that might have cost me potential new or repeat business down the road. So I'm not sure if I can quantify what it cost me, but it might have cost me. I have not, though not made yeah, I'm trying to think about mistakes that I have made that have big dollar amounts to them, and luckily there have not been any of those.
Genita, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
I guess the one question I might have asked myself, and maybe it's been asked in a couple different ways, but what advice would I give somebody looking to start a business is really about the advice I would give to somebody looking to start a business is to really think about what it is you enjoy, what it is that you do well that no one else does or no one does as well as you do. And then to give yourself just some time. Think about okay, can I afford to try this for 3 months or 6 months and then do it? Don't freak out about it. Just do it and take the chance. And you might find out that you really hate it. You might find out that you really love it. And if it works out, it'll be really amazing.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Rapid Round of Fun?
Yes.
Your ideal car?
A city bus.
Your favorite holiday?
Easter.
Your favorite color?
Red.
Your favorite comfort food?
Ice cream.
Your first job?
Student internship at Argonne National Laboratories.
The last movie you saw?
The 1989 Batman with Michael Keaton.
You relax doing what?
Walking.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Pass.
Your favorite dance song?
No one song, but I do like danceable music.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Well, there are things that I eat almost every day, like oatmeal, peanut butter toast, or an orange juice, and a banana. I have a routine for breakfast. Sorry, that's not a rapid answer, but I definitely believe that you benefit from a good breakfast, but also you benefit from not having to make choices that early in the morning, and just oatmeal, peanut butter toast, banana, calcium fortified orange juice.
Work out or hit the couch?
Hit the couch.
Genita Robinson, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you, and feel free to leave all your social media handles.
So you are welcome to follow me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Genita Robinson. That's G as in girl, E and N as in Nancy, I, T as in Tom, A, Robinson, Robinson. And if you Google Genita Robinson on LinkedIn, you will find me. The best way to contact me is through my website. And the website is gcrconsultingllc.com. And that's again, G as in girl, C as in cat, R as in Robinson, consulting, LLC.com. And that's for Genita C. Robinson, consulting.com. And there's a contact form on there with information about all of our services, some case studies, lots of goodies.
Thank you, Genita. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.